Socrates Garrett Live every Tuesday on WeBelieveDigital.com. Socrates talks politics, finances, and social issues that affect the Black community and so much more. Phenomenal guests and engaging conversation. Straight talk, no nonsense topics that are informative, educational, and inspiring. Socrates goes live with politicians, church leaders, business owners, and others. The time is now, talking to you about us. Socrates Garrett Live every Tuesday on WeBelieveDigital.com.
Welcome to Socrates Garrett Live. It's always good to be back in the studio, to have an opportunity to talk to America, to talk about those things that are important to most of us, to try and figure out ideas and ways and concepts where we can improve the quality of life specifically for Mississippians, but then ideas that may well be suited for the rest of the country as well. We've had great shows over the last several months, and our viewership continues to grow each and every week. I want to remind you that we can be seen on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube. We're on Roku. We're on WeBelieveDigital.com. And so there are plenty outlets for you to be able to catch We Believe Digital. We have great shows each and every evening. We have wonderful guests, and this evening is no different. We've had some great guests here in the past, some individuals that have made a mark in this community and in the world. And my guest this evening is no different. My guest is attorney Dorsey Carson. And Dorsey, we're glad to have you in the studios with us today.
It's good to be here. I'm so glad to see you.
It's good to see you as well. Full disclosure, I'll just get that out the way right now. You know, Dorsey has represented me a time or two when I've gotten in trouble. He's pretty much gotten me out most of the time anyway.
That's how we met 2 decades ago almost.
2 decades ago. That's been a long time.
It has been.
Dorsey, tell us a little bit, and tell our listening audience, we're being seen in 139 countries all over the world. Tell our listening audiences what it's like for you as a prominent attorney in Mississippi and how you navigate and mitigate the things that you have to deal with every day here.
You know, it's when I moved back here in '02, shortly before I met you, I'd been practicing law in Atlanta, and I told folks that by moving back I could be a big fish in a small pond rather than a small fish in a big pond. And I think that's true, but it also impacts the way I go about the practice of law. And by that I mean that it's easier to take risk here, and you're not always rewarded for taking those risks, but sometimes we'll take on causes that may or may not be cases that anybody would even consider in bigger cities. You know, you kind of get into, when I was in Atlanta, I worked for a firm that only did construction law. And great group of folks, and, you know, learned a lot. But we weren't going to do anything other than construction law ever. And most of the big firms there are only going to cater to their particular industry. Well, here, in particular, after we started our firm 7 years ago, after being at big firms for about 17 years, we can entertain those things, and we can take on both big clients and small clients, and do things. You know, I take pride in thinking outside the box on a lot of things, and some of those things have then transferred into us giving national presentations to other lawyers about here are ways to do this. Here are things that you may not have thought about that have worked for us. And I'm just thinking off the top of my head, one example is copyright law, where we never encountered that or dealt with copyright when I was at a construction law firm. I got hired once by a firm out of Florida, did a architect versus architect case, learned about what a huge hammer it can be in enforceability. And then we started using that with some of our clients to leverage settlements, but also I've got a practice now. I work with a firm out in New York, and we cover most of their stuff in the Southeast. So it's
So how many offices and where are they all located?
well, our office, we've got an Atlanta office and a Houston office.
Okay.
And Jackson. Those are the sort of the cities. There's just so much time I can spend on the road, and so we were looking at a lot of different places. Atlanta, since I had worked there previously. Houston is just a great place, I think, to develop business, but it's also a good place to get in and out of. I love being here in Jackson. I can fly over, do my business within 48 hours and get back to my 11-year-old daughter.
Well, that's one of the things that Jackson really has. It has proximity. It's a beautiful state. I always say here in Mississippi, where the grass is just a little bit greener and the air is a little bit cleaner. We have less than 3 million people in the entire state of Mississippi, so there's a lot of room for growth and expansions and opportunity here in the state. But Dorsey, yet we remain last in just about every meaningful category. Help me and the listening audience understand why that is.
Well, that's a tough question, but I would say that well, I don't know if you ever saw House of Cards, but there was one episode where a congressman has decided to turn into an independent. He switched parties or went nonpartisan. And the assistant to the president said, that's a good move. Becoming independent is the wave of the future, and it always will be. And so it's that always will be. It seems like we're about to turn that corner. We're about to get somewhere, but we always will be. And I think part of that is that as we get close to that corner, as we get close to turning that corner, we lose some of our youngest, brightest folks right out of college. Some of them come back, some don't. But we've got several things going on. First of all, there's the drain of people that Ray Mavis used to tell me our greatest export is our people. And if you think about Mississippi's most famous people, what made them famous? Where did they become famous? And the answer is not Mississippi.
Right.
They moved out. They became famous elsewhere.
Is that going to continue forever, Dorsey? You mentioned we're about to turn the corner, but we don't turn the corner. And then your point was that one of the reasons for that is that we have a brain drain, that we lose our youth. They leave here because of the lack of opportunity for them.
Right.
And so I don't know what you and other leaders are going to be able to do to turn this around. I mean, it's critically important. And I asked you the question because you are not only a prominent attorney, but you also run for elected office in the state of Mississippi. I believe you ran for the House of Representatives, and your name was bannered around for the last mayoral election as a candidate for mayor of this great city of Jackson. So you're involved. So if you're going to be involved, then you have to have ideas and concepts on what the world we can do to turn things around and make things better. And I want you to share some of your concepts with us.
Well, I think some of those things have been happening. I mean, I don't think you can underestimate the change of the flag, in terms of the image that and it doesn't happen overnight where suddenly people go, oh, the flag has changed. Let's move there. And to me, it doesn't even matter how it changed, the process, the sausage making. It's the fact that now no longer do we have a symbol of repression and that goes back, over 100 years. Symbols matter. So I will say that I think that was a big step. Obviously, it's not enough, and so I think Mississippi does its best when we stay away from the social issues, and because young people don't care about them. Young people don't care about gay marriage. They don't care about transgender issues or anything like that. They don't care. I mean, by that I mean they don't care to stifle it or get involved in people's personal business. What government, I think we get our priorities out of whack because of that. That there have been legislative sessions, for example, that seem to only focus on those things and not the other things. We've had for a long time a lack of capital here, financial capital. It really started when the banks started consolidating, when the insurance companies started consolidating, when energy started consolidating. And so those jobs really moved to Birmingham, moved to Atlanta, moved to Houston, moved out. So how do you get that back? Because without that kind of financial investment, that's a key piece of it. It's not the only piece, but it's a pretty big piece. And the answer, I think, to that is, well, we have to go back out there. You know, if the mountain won't come to Muhammad, we've got to go to the mountain. And we should be, as a community, our governmental leaders should be focused on, okay, how do we get growth here? Well, the number one thing you do is foster your existing businesses. And it's sort of like I had this conversation at my office. You know, we can go out there and find new clients and recruit new clients and go marketing and all of that. Or we could build up our existing client base because they need more work and they need help, and we can help them grow.
Right.
And that's the starting point for a place like Jackson, for Mississippi. What do we have here right now? We've got a lot of talent. We've got a lot of ability. We've got a lot of business people with vision.
What do you say, though, Dorsey, in a state where the African American population is 35 to 40%, and yet the African American business community gets less than 1% for contracts for goods and services from the state of Mississippi? How do you reconcile that?
You just nailed it. I mean, that is, so you've got two things working against you. The first is that historically there's been discrimination, you know, across the board. Okay, fast forward where we are. Of course, we've still got discrimination. It's just not as obvious anymore. But now we have, I believe, more of just the financial inequalities. And the fact is, as if you're a minority contractor and you go to the bank or you go get a surety bond and you're turning in your financials, chances are, maybe subconsciously, but people are going to be looking at it with a harsher view. And sometimes I would say that there are all sorts of stereotypes that continue to foster that, and it's not all just from the white community. There's a within the black community too. There's negative talk. There's infighting, and all of that really just brings down everybody. And I may be getting off topic a little bit.
I think you're right on point. I think we got to have these conversations.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to talk about what's wrong so that we can get it out in the open and on the table, and maybe we'll find a solution or a path forward. Because we can't continue the way we're going. We can't remain last in everything, Dorsey.
Right.
I mean, I used to think it was the old heads that kept us last when the Delta Council controlled the state of Mississippi. But now we got all these new young people that don't seem to be making the progressive changes that you would expect.
I'll use an example that might seem a little simpler, but if you grew up in a poor part of Jackson, chances are you came right out of the batch with a bad credit rating.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You might borrow money to go to college. Well, you don't have a payment history, or maybe you get out and you're not making enough money, so you miss some. Well, that catches up when you go to buy insurance for your car. The poorer you are and the poorer your credit rating, the more you will pay for insurance. So it's self-perpetuating. You've got you don't have enough money, so you're about to pay more than anybody else.
Oddity is that prices are higher in the poorest community for everything, including electricity.
Right.
And that is a real bad situation. Hold your point there, Dorsey.
Okay.
We'll are going to go to a commercial break now. Enjoy the rest of the show right after this commercial.
Have you had your Earth Blend coffee today? At Earth Blend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earth Blend Coffee.
To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
Welcome to the Adventurous Podcast. I'm your host, Deidre Perry, and these are my co-hosts. And weekly, we will be coming to you to bring you the latest information in the world of agriculture. We invite you to join us every Saturday from 10 to 10:30. Join us. Come on, take an adventure.
You're back with Socrates, Garrett Live. And again, we are being broadcast on Roku TV, on WeBelieveDigital.com, on Facebook, on YouTube, and Amazon.com. And so that broadcast studio is right here in Jackson, Mississippi. We have one of the finest studios that you'll find anywhere in the South. African-American owned, African-American run, and operated. Our producer here has got a long list of clients that he's done commercials for, remotes for, and anything that you might need in the way of video production. So get in touch with us. You can reach us at 601-209-9199, or the number will be scrolling at the bottom of the screen during the show. Tonight we're here with our guest, attorney Dorsey Carson, and we're getting into some serious conversation about what's wrong in the state of Mississippi and why we remain in the last positions in every meaningful category, and what we got to do to change that. So Dorsey, let's get back there. You were making the point that if you start behind, if you come from a poor family, it's just hard.
It is hard
to change your trajectory.
Yeah. And I'm the first person in my direct family to have a 4-year degree, and I came from both sides, from farmers. So it's not easy for white generations either, but it is easier. I think in Mississippi and in other places. But one key thing I think that has developed is that there is an increasing emphasis on college education. So you get more of that. I'd say anybody who wants to succeed, no matter what your race, any Mississippian, has to be mobile. You don't necessarily have to go move to Atlanta or move to Houston, but you better be working with people who are. The old Bonnie and Clyde quote, "Why do you go rob banks? Because that's where the money is."
Right.
Well, why did I go to Houston, Texas?
Yeah.
Because I went to a fundraiser for the mayor of Atlanta, thrown by the mayor of Houston.
Yeah.
And I was talking next to a gentleman there, and when I left, somebody said that guy's worth $2 billion.
Yeah.
So that doesn't happen in Mississippi. You don't just accidentally strike up a conversation and exchange business cards with somebody worth $2 billion.
No, it's hard. In Mississippi, we don't have the CEOs.
Right.
To mentor, that we can have engagements with in terms of how we can be of benefit and how we can grow our business. We have Entergy, and Haley Zachary is a great guy, know him personally, but I don't see Entergy's footprint in the community in a way that I see other utilities in other cities.
Yeah.
And so, the gas company, Atmos Gas, now it used to be Mississippi Valley Gas long ago, but now it's Atmos Gas. David Gates is a great guy, but I don't see their footprint where they're making a real difference in what's happening in this community. And they never seem to speak out on the things that are going on in our legislature that are wrong.
Yeah.
Dorsey, you know that we just the Supreme Court just overturned the bill for the marijuana initiative,
Right.
that where 74% of Mississippians had voted for.
Right.
And so how are we ever going to get past this, Dorsey, if we can't get folk of goodwill to speak up?
Well, that's a great point, and it does take that. And when you look through Mississippi history, there have been good examples of that, of people who truly looked at either public service, that they're going into it for the right reasons, or business leaders who were willing to take a chance, and because they were doing the right thing. We've got a community with a moral compass. Folks here, they go to church. They may not always read the book the way I do or the way you do, but there's a basis there to build off of. There's a moral basis there that I think you can build a state around, and we can do these things. I think a lot of times it does take that boldness. It also takes vision, though, and kind of the same thing that we're talking about with business. Do our legislators have vision, or are they just copying what's been done in other states? The only reason we don't have a controversial anti-voting law coming through is that we just missed it by accident. The legislature, I think all of us are like, oh, thank God, this happening in Georgia and Texas, because I think we all know it could have been happening here.
Right.
And I'll tell you, we started getting some businesses. We started getting films that said, I'm not going to film in Georgia right now. Well, that may be a temporary thing, but it's a real thing.
Well,
Once you start getting businesses here to film, I'm using that as an example, but once things start coming, they grow off of that. And that's why I say sometimes we're our own worst enemy when it comes to dealing with social issues at the legislature, instead of dealing with how do we grow, how do we expand. Infrastructure is so important. Construction is so important for our city, for our state. We are geographically located right between Atlanta and Dallas, right between New Orleans and Memphis. There's really not too many places in the whole United States that's better equipped for shipping. And through our airports, through our trains, and through 18-wheelers, and that's a growing business. So there's a lot of examples like that of how Mississippi can grow with some vision, with some understanding of where the growth can be. Where are the jobs of the future?
Well, you were a candidate, or you were rumored to be a candidate. I don't think you ever became a candidate, but I think maybe you did some exploring in terms of what that might look like for you as a mayoral candidate. And then I think Susan probably pulled you back. Susan is his wife, and she probably pulled you back from that, which was probably pretty smart.
She was never exploring.
But had you run for mayor, what were the kinds of things that you thought you could bring to the city?
Well, one is kind of what I was talking about with business is, I am fortunate to be where I'm at. I worked hard, but also, some things fell into place. I've got great contacts, and as and I'm not talking about just me, but a mayor or leader, city council member, I think should be out there, first of all, going to our existing businesses, meeting with the leaders of our existing businesses. What do you need? How can we help? A lot of the businesses that we lose are simply because they don't feel heard. They don't feel like people care. There's no telling how many businesses that Jackson could have kept just by meeting with its leaders. Same for the state, too. I mean, how many industries can grow? And where we're seeing growth in Mississippi, we're seeing some on the coast. We're seeing a lot outside of Memphis. Most of my clients in construction right now, they're finding themselves moving in that direction right now. So there are areas where we can see continued growth. Jackson needs that. And the legislature, I think there is a history there that hasn't been good between the legislature and the city of Jackson. It hadn't been good for a while. Well, it's time to, we've got Speaker of the House that lives in Hinds County. We've got a lieutenant governor that lives in Hinds County. We've got a governor who lives in Rankin County. Most of the power structure now is in central Mississippi. Why can we not make that work? Why can our leaders not get together, our tri-county leaders, the supervisors, the mayors, and get together and say, hey, this is really important. Downtown Jackson, the capital's not moving. It's not moving. Let's make this where people want to come. And even our church, when you bring in a preacher to come visit from out of state and they're hitting potholes, well, that's not the best first impression. No. And we joke about it, a lot about our potholes, and but it's serious. We've got the workforce here. We've got people that want to work. And if we pay them a fair wage, they will go work. And we've got the need for work. It's there. Why aren't we bringing these two together?
Wow. Well, I tell you, we're going to have to. And, Martin Luther King said from his Birmingham jail cell that it was not the lack or the acts of the voices of the violent people, but it's the appalling silence of good people. Yeah. And we don't have enough leaders speaking out. Yep. And so then when we do speak out, it's viewed as that you're criticizing existing leadership. And you're really not criticizing existing leadership as much as you're trying to find a way to rectify some of the issues that keep holding us back.
That's right. In my office, and we've got 6 attorneys, we've got 10 full-time people, I don't want yes men.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, it doesn't engender loyalty. It doesn't engender respect. If I respect you, I'm going to have an honest conversation with you. And if you respect me, you're going to listen. Mm-hmm. And it may not change your view or anything, but I would say, one of the main steps of a mayor or city council member or whoever is have people you can trust to give you honest feedback. Don't consider that person to be somebody who's not loyal to you or anything like that. We don't need the emperor has no clothes kind of scenario. We need to speak truth. And the truth is that these problems affect us. Truth is crime does affect us, and when we and roads that does affect us, and education. Governor Winter told me a story a long time ago about when he was governor. We were competing for a plant between us and South Carolina. And the company, I think, was based out of Chicago. And at the end of the day, it went to South Carolina. And Governor Winter said, well, I'm going to find out why. And he flew up on the plane. And they said, look, it wasn't the incentives you gave us. It wasn't the grant money, the tax breaks, all of that. Y'all did great on that. We came and we looked at your schools. And we just couldn't ask our people to put their children in your schools. And so then you get back to, really what happened in the 60s and 70s, all over the state, when desegregation didn't result in desegregation. It just resulted in private schools. And you'll see a lot of the areas of Mississippi that are doing the best are the ones where that didn't develop. If you go into parts of North Mississippi, the public schools are all strong because the white folks didn't leave. Mm-hmm. The doctors and lawyers' kids still were there.
Well, that didn't happen in Jackson.
It didn't happen in Jackson, and it's still not happening in Jackson.
Most of the doctors and lawyers moved away from Jackson.
Yeah.
And took their kids out of the school system.
Yeah.
And so it makes it even more difficult to have a A-rated school or to have a school that's not failing when your intake talent has been lowered.
That's right.
And I don't know how you fix that, because you can't say to people that you ought not leave when they're trying to find a better life for them and their children, and they want them to have the best education. So I don't know how you ask them to stay.
Yeah, and I mean, there are teachers I know that have their kids in other counties, they're in Jackson. So, and our child, she's finishing up McWillie, and she's going to a private school next year, and that was not an easy decision for us, But for what she wants to do, which is performing arts, she, found a place and found a home that works for her. But you can't ignore the fact that, most of our kids in Mississippi are public education.
Yeah.
Something like 90%. I can't remember the exact statistic. And until we really get a grasp on that and say, okay, the overall picture is, all our schools are underfunded. Our teachers, we have to buy supplies for our teachers, or they have to buy their own.
Hold that point right there for me. We're getting ready to go to a commercial break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Have you had your Earthblend coffee today? At Earthblend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earthblend Coffee.
To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
Welcome to the Adventurous Podcast. I'm your host, Deidre Perry, and these are my co-hosts. And weekly, we will be coming to you to bring you the latest information in the world of agriculture. We invite you to join us every Saturday from 10 to 10:30. Join us. Come on, take an adventure.
Welcome back. We're here with attorney Dorsey Carson. Dorsey Carson is a prominent attorney in Mississippi. He thought about running for mayor in a city that's 85% African American. So for him to be a white attorney, and felt like that he had the confidence and the support of enough people for him to be a candidate for mayor of this great city, means that he has been involved in our community. He works across the aisle. He's involved in all of the events in our city, whether they're black or white, and he's got a lot of great friends. And he's an individual that we're counting on to help find a path forward to move Mississippi to where it rightfully belongs, and that is somewhere north of the bottom. We just cannot continue to operate as a state at that level. We have too much to offer. Again, it's a beautiful state. Dorsey mentioned earlier that we're so centrally located, where Interstate 20 and Interstate 55 intersect right here in Jackson, Mississippi. What better distribution point could you have? And Amazon and companies like that are recognizing that, and you're seeing movement in this direction. And so we got everything to offer, but we got a serious brain drain, and we don't have the talent that we need. So Dorsey, I'm disappointed to hear that we're going to lose your daughter out of the public schools, but tell us a little bit more about how and why you made that decision.
Well, I'd say she made the decision. She's old enough, but I think part of it is, and this actually, for years when I campaigned on this was my big criticism of Jackson, is that we lose kids at the middle school level. We built up some good elementary schools. We've got some high schools that not all are succeeding, but there's a level there that is. middle school is where we lose kids, and it's often through movement out of Jackson. You know, a lot of times people may have 2 or 3 kids, and they, you know, decide that they don't want to stay in this school system. They don't want to pay for private school, so they leave. For her personally, I don't want to talk too much about her personally, because she'll speak for herself. But for her personally, she wants to be on Broadway, and she's in ballet, and so she went and visited the Performing Arts Center at Jackson Academy and talked with the teachers there, and for her it was like going to college campus.
Wow.
And for most of my friends that I met when I was in law school at University of Georgia, and I'd talk to them about their middle school and high school experiences, I realized that for them going to college was not that big of a deal, because they came from really big schools that had a lot of different activities and a lot to offer, no matter what your interests were. And so I think that is one of our challenges here in Jackson and other places, is to have that kind of ability to go say, okay, who's our expert here, and who's our expert here, and who's our expert here, and kind of pull it together sort of a la carte for these kids. When you look at and I said this previously too, in Northeast Jackson, there is no middle school, there is no high school. You know, there's only elementary schools. And so there aren't any.
How does that work? I've not heard of that.
There are no middle schools or high schools on the east side of 55.
You got to be kidding me, don't you?
No, there aren't any. And that kind of gets back to the whole vision thing, is that if that,
where do those kids go, though? I see that
they
elementary school.
A lot of the kids from McWillie are going next year to Northwest. You know, some will go to APAC, some will go to Murrah, but they will be split up. They're not.
Okay.
They're not kids they're all going to stay, which is another challenge, because you want you're more likely to keep your group together if you keep your group together.
Right.
And this year was the first year that McWillie actually went from 6th grade to 5th grade. So initially we had planned on staying there through 6th grade, but you know, at that point you have to make a decision. But a lot of our problems with JPS, of course, and with the city is money. It's not all money. But most of the studies show that the more you get down to the bottom, to the classroom and all that, the better results you get. Now, there's also, though, this sort of base of, is your school clean? Is your school, you know, is it a place of pride where you can take pride in your school? And I can say at McWillie, I felt like absolutely. That's, the PTA is over 100% membership. Grandparents are members. It was a place where there's a lot of that kind of support. Unfortunately, not every school can say that.
Yeah.
And so it makes a difference there.
Oh, I know it does. And Dorsey, I mean, you are a great attorney. You've done extremely well. You had offices in Atlanta and Houston and Jackson. So you're a successful individual, and you can afford to expose your daughter to many things that kids out of this city will never even dream or see.
True.
I noticed that you were in the movies and that you were doing a lot of traveling, and share a little bit about what it's like outside of the country. It's just not outside of Mississippi, but outside of this country. How do you see the rest of this world?
Well, my daughter did get into ballet school in Spain, so we're for this summer. So we will be. We just found out the other day that it's going to be open up for us to go, and so I'll find out this summer how the post-COVID world is. But you know, one thing that I know from all my travels is that people are people wherever you go. And we may, I remember the first time I went to Morocco, the first time I went to a Muslim country, and this was during the first Iraq War, and I thought maybe I'm crossing a boundary I shouldn't. Maybe I'm going too far. And the people couldn't have been more welcoming. And it was it wasn't a shock, but you see people and you're like, all anybody wants is a better life for their kids. No matter where you are in the world. Right. There are exceptions to that, but actually the day I got to Morocco, we're driving. I had a guide pick me up, and he told me, he said, "Did you hear what happened in Madrid today? There was a bombing, 200 people dead," and he said it was Moroccans that did it. And he said, matter of fact, and I'm thinking, now I know I've come to the wrong place. But we're driving into Casablanca, and he points over to some high-rises. And he said, that's where those people come from. That's the projects. That's where the poor people are. That's where people come and take advantage of them and take them and give them a community that they didn't have. And that's no different from Jackson, Mississippi, where you've got a lot of smart kids who could get in sports, could thrive in the arts and all these different areas. Baseball used to be a thing. I talked to somebody who said now, instead of our, young urban black kids getting involved in baseball, all those jobs are going to Caribbean folks, and the major leagues are developing in places like that instead of somebody like Jackson, someplace like Jackson. And so without that kind of fostering that kind of hope and ability to do that, a lot of those kids will get into gangs or, get around, if not a formal gang, an informal one. And so I think a lot of what Jackson and Mississippi, a lot of the struggles are that we do have intelligent kids, and intelligent kids are the hardest ones to keep interested. These are not dumb kids. Right. And so, it takes some vision. I do think that Jackson should get back to public parks, basketball courts, swimming pools. Let's bring some of this stuff back where kids can enjoy being around each other, can have activities. Yeah. And we're not focusing on those things. And I think we really should.
Yeah, you're right. And our kids are acting out. I mean, the incident that we had on Interstate 55, where the guys that were doing wheelies, on the interstate, that's just cannot happen. And we have a lot of racing in the streets now, and our kids go and they congregate in a shopping mall area or something on the weekends, etc., because there really is nothing for them to do.
There's nothing to do. And I've I'd never been happier to see cops stopping speeders, and I got my own ticket, after that. But it was just nice to see a presence, and because we hadn't even had that until that incident. And I think we probably all know people that have been victims of crime and do not feel like it was, don't feel like they were cared about, that they, sort of pushed out of the way. Hey, we're not going to bother with this, too much trouble and all of that. So that gets into the crime element, which is also a major factor on recruiting businesses and retaining residents, mainly.
Yeah, and if you don't have rooftops, you don't have a tax base. And then you don't have the funds to improve the schools and other things. And it's a real bad cycle. You just keep, like in quicksand, you're just slowly going down, and you don't have the ability to stop this skid unless there are individuals with vision. And I think I heard you say that vision is the number one thing that we gotta have.
Got to.
We probably missing, but we gotta have leaders with vision, and it's because it's going to take some creativity. It's going to take some doing some things differently to stop this skid. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I deliver Meals on Wheels around different parts of Jackson. So I see parts of Jackson that normally I would never see. And as I'm driving through, sometimes I'm like, it costs $1,000 to tear down that house, and this whole street would look better if that one house were gone. $1,000. You could take kids that don't have jobs, and you could say, okay, we're gonna sell. If you're fixing up a house that was a house that you bought at a tax sale, we're going to give you a tax credit. We're going to sell you half price paint, and we'll give you a kid. You just go paint it, you fix it up, and it's not much money out of our tax base, but in 3-4 years you're back on the tax rolls, and people move in. It's a snowball effect, but people have to see those signs. And that getting sort of to what you said about Entergy and other companies, they'll step out when other people do sometimes, and that's not the way it should be.
No.
But it is the way it is. And so when you get businesses involved, you were president of the chamber, once you get 5-6 key businesses on, everybody else falls into place. Once you get 5-6 neighborhoods going the right direction, others will start doing it. You take down the bad house, suddenly everybody has a different vision. The same reason that and there are studies that show that kids perform better in schools that are clean, lawns cut, flag flying, and they actually have better performance, better scores. And if you've got teachers that are telling you you're smart instead of, you're not, it affects everything.
Oh, it does. The environment plays a great deal in who you will become. What you've been able to see, because you cannot become what you have not seen.
Yeah.
And so it is critically important that if you seek cleanliness, and if you see communities that are holding themselves up and everybody in the neighborhood is cutting their grass and things of that nature, then you get self-esteem gets picked up a little bit.
Right. That's
and
exactly
right.
I
hear what you're saying, and we got to figure out a way how to build self-esteem in our kids. Yeah. Hold on that thought for a moment, Dorsey. You're visiting here tonight, viewing us with WeBelieveDigital.com. This is Socrates Garrett Live. We come to you every Tuesday at 7:30. You can catch this show on YouTube, on Facebook, on WeBelieveDigital.com, and on Roku TV. Stay tuned for this commercial, and we'll be right back.
Blend Coffee today.
We got.
At Earth Blend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world. Blended and roasted to perfection,
So we're going
giving
in this
you
direction.
superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup with Earth Blend Coffee.
To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
Welcome to the Adventurous Podcast. I'm your host, Deidre Perry, and these are my co-hosts. And weekly, we will be coming to you to bring you the latest information in the world of agriculture. We invite you to join us every Saturday from 10 to 10:30. Join us. Come on, take an adventure.
We're here this evening with attorney Dorsey Carson, a prominent attorney in Jackson, Mississippi, with offices in Houston, Texas, Atlanta, Georgia, and Jackson. He's probably the premier construction attorney, and I know that, Dorsey, you're doing other things in your firm. But I know that you build your name and your brand and your reputation as probably the premier construction attorney in this state of Mississippi, and maybe in those other offices as well. You've had an opportunity to go all over the world. You come out of Mississippi and build yourself up, and now you're able to afford the finer things for your family. And I've had the privilege of watching your daughters grow up. And I've seen the kinds of things that you've been able to do and afford the family, and it's remarkable. And you set the standard, you set the bar real high for the rest of us.
That's right.
But we're going to get there.
With my daughter.
We're going to get there. And I know that, you were invited to the inauguration with President Barack Obama. You seem to be getting invitations to a lot of things that most Mississippians don't get. Tell us a little bit about your relationship with Ray Mabus, the former Secretary of the Navy.
Governor Mabus was governor when I was in junior high, and I paged at the legislature. And it's really where I first thought to myself, these people some of them had law degrees, and I thought, I can do this. I'm smarter than most of these people. But when Mabus ran for re-election, I was in college, and I worked on his campaign, and of course he didn't win. I don't blame that on me, but it's how it goes. But I worked on Bill Clinton's campaign, and I was head of students for Glenn Gore at Mississippi State. Well, that was actually the first time I ever got on an airplane, and I was 19 years old, I think, 19 or 20. So my daughter has a much different upbringing than I did. But I flew up. It's funny now because I flew up under somebody else's name that had some frequent flyer points and all of that. I was a little nervous about that, but I had to fly from Golden Triangle to Memphis to Detroit to D.C., and I had to stay for a week, which was great. But it opened up. I saw during that 1 week how I met all these wonderful leaders I'd just seen on TV, and it just becomes real. You're like, okay, this really is something. I'm not an outsider any more than the rest of the people here. I'm not experienced. I'm not elected. But you're having real conversations with people who are, making decisions nationally and affecting the world around them. And so that made a big impression on me. And so when Obama ran, and initially I was supporting Hillary, and I ran into Ray Mabus, and I assumed he was supporting Hillary because Bill had appointed him as ambassador to Saudi Arabia and all of that. And he told me he was supporting Obama. And I said, do you really think he can win? And he said, I really do. And I said, Barack Hussein Obama, a black man named Barack Hussein Obama. And he said, I really think he's got it, And we talked about vision, He's got the vision.
Now, let me interrupt you right there, because I think it's critically important to know for the rest of the world to know that Ray Mabus was former governor of the state of Mississippi. And he was supporting Barack Obama for president of the United States of America. That just shows you that all things are possible.
Sure, and I think when Mabus made his public endorsement, he was actually in Baton Rouge on the steps of the Capitol there, and he said, I'll summarize, but what I recall is he said, I represent Barack Obama's core constituency, white Southern men. Of course, he got a good kick. He's got a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
But during that campaign, we were working at the convention. I went to the convention with him. I gave him the offer of, that I would drive him around. And I was a partner at a law firm. I'm like, I'll drive you around. I'll carry your briefcase. In exchange, I get to go to every cool party every night. They said, that sounds like a good idea. And so I ended up with him and South Carolina former Governor Jim Hodges. And we opened up doors for each other just by being our little entourage. And met so many people and had so many great experiences. I went to Biden's private party that Wednesday night, and then I met Michelle Obama there and got a picture. And next thing I know, election day, I'm getting invited backstage to Chicago, and I'm there, when America's first African American is elected president. So I've just had all these amazing experiences that I know I'm fortunate to have been in. But a lot of it is because I did get involved in politics, and I did. I never allowed myself to feel like an outsider. Maybe that's a good way to say it. Because I've had jobs where, where okay, you're not, you're not going to be this. I'm going to be this, and not you. And you just don't allow people to tell you to define who you are.
Right. Well, help me understand, Dorsey, because listening to you, I truly don't think that you see race and color as a real issue. I think you see people, and there are not many people that I think see that way, and especially from my white friends in the Deep South, where there's been so many tragic things that you have to get over as an African American, but I truly believe that you see this thing is about as equal people being equal as anyone that I've ever talked to.
Well, I appreciate that. It didn't happen overnight. I mean, it's not the way I grew up. And so my life has been an evolution. I think Mississippi's evolved, and I think Jackson's evolved. But as long as we live in segregated communities, it's always going to be a problem. I mean, I had a friend of mine came over to my house. He lives in West Jackson. He brought his son, who's a ninth grader, and he told his dad later, "I've never been to a white person's house," you know, and then he said, "I've never talked to a white person," and that shocked me. I'm like, "What? You know, you've never talked to a white person?" And so, as long as we kind of live in different communities, it's hard to break that. But the fact is, your DNA and mine's exactly alike. You know, there's the only thing different is our skin tone, and you know, but we're all humans. So no, it's still a problem that we have people that can't see that way, and most people can't. Right. Not because of an intentional act, but just subconsciously. You know, I think for most people, I think racism is subconscious in most people. But I think the worst place you can be is to say, "Oh, I don't have any racism in me." You know, because we all come with our childhood baggage, if you will, or things of that nature. But the fact is, some of my and really it developed when I ran for office, and I got to really know some people in the black community here that turned into friendships, and then friendships turned into, you know, understanding, and to the point that I have some of my friends, some of my best friends are black, and it really frees me. It frees me up. And if we all had that kind of freedom, it'd be a better place.
Well, we got to get there. Unfortunately, the state of Mississippi turned down the Medicaid expansion bill. And many of us believe that the only reason that Mississippi turned it down was because it was Obamacare.
Let's call it Trump care. I don't care what you call it. You know, let's call it something else.
The only reason that we turned it down was because it was called Obamacare, and we just can't get past that at this time. And Dorsey, you represent a different outlook. I mean, you're proud of the fact that the state flag was removed, was taken down. Mississippi probably was one of the last few states to fly the Confederate flag.
Right.
So it was good to see that come down. And, you know, in my conversations with you, those kinds of things you think were very important and will help us remove some of the vestiges of our past and give us the freedom to move forward. But we got a long way to go if we can't, you know, expand Medicare.
Yeah.
We got a long way to go, though, I say.
And on that specific issue, I mean, we have a high percentage of our population that has no health care, not the ability to get it, no health insurance, nor the ability to get it. You've got a federal, you know, government through this federal act that's going to give you money. And when we were talking about capital, the lack of capital, well, here you've got the biggest bank in the United States that's going to not loan you money, but give you money. And so that was, and in some ways, COVID was a very similar. Like, why is this political? Why don't we just say that it's in all of our best interest to do this? First of all, the financial benefits are incredible. University Medical Center would be twice as big as it is right now. We would have a much healthier population. We wouldn't have people dying as young. We would have more productive citizens health-wise that could work. All the benefits of just, and forget about the moral factor of you're helping your fellow man. You know, even if you set that aside, the amazing financial benefits, the jobs that are created, the income that circulates through your society, the fact that you have schools here, that if you have more doctors, they're buying houses and they don't want to drive as far. If they can buy some land and, you know, and fix up an existing house or tear down a couple of houses and build a new place, that's all bringing income into your community.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that, I think when people, and I think this is, I think a failure, I don't think Obama did a great job of selling his package into the Republican districts or the swing districts. You know, why not spend some of your campaign money where you know a congressperson's going to be in a district they're going to be in danger if they vote for Obamacare? Why not go in there beforehand and have commercials, have a PR campaign, things like that? And I think you do see some of that now, but a lot of it's too little too late. You know, it's for things like that. Now other states now are adopting, you know, ones that have held out, Republican strongholds. We're not doing Medicaid expansion. And now they are. And so I think part of it is as simple as stop calling it Obamacare in Mississippi. And like I said, I don't care if you call it Trump care. I don't care what you call it. But let's get it here, because it's literally billions of dollars, not millions.
Yeah,
but
I don't
billions.
know if African Americans would go to the doctor if you called it Trump care. So it's just a bet on that.
They're not going to change the name of the hospital.
Yeah, he didn't do well in the African American community.
He didn't do well in my household either.
Well, Dorsey, it's been wonderful having you here this evening, and I hope that somebody out there somewhere, you know, will pick up an idea, a concept, and understand, as our guest has said tonight, where there is no vision, the people perish. And what we have here in Mississippi is a lack of a true vision at every level that will bring about change and bring about prosperity and improve the foundations of what's required to have a great society. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday night. Good night.
Socrates Garrett Live every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. on WeBelieveDigital.com. Socrates talks politics, finances, and social issues that affect the Black community and so much more. Phenomenal guests and engaging conversation. Straight talk, no nonsense topics that are informative, educational, and inspiring. Socrates goes live with politicians, church leaders, business owners, and others. The time is now, talking to you about us. Socrates Garrett Live every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. on WeBelieveDigital.com.
Have you had your Earthblend coffee today? At Earthblend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup. with Earth Blend Coffee.
To order, visit earthblendcoffee.co now.
Welcome to the Adventurous Podcast. I'm your host, Deidre Perry, and these are my co-hosts. And weekly, we will be coming to you to bring you the latest information in the world of agriculture. We invite you to join us every Saturday from 10 to 10:30. Join us. Come on, take an adventure.